Thank you, everyone, for making the time. Thank you to Salman and Carlos, who are alumni. And this webinar is a specialized webinar, which would we will ask questions from both Salman and Carlos that how was their journey after MMAI and what are they doing right now, and some tips and advice from them to be successful. Both of them are very successful in their career. This is the info session of Master of Management in Artificial Intelligence program with Smith School of Business, Queen's University, and I am Kurat. I am director of this program. Again, this specialized webinar is beyond the MMAI horizon. Alumni unveil their post-MMAI adventures. I would introduce both of them with their titles and when did they graduate. But before that, I would like to have the land acknowledgement. Smith School of Business at Queen's University is situated on traditional Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory. We are grateful to be able to live, team, and play on these lands. The business degree, this is our business degree for today's managers and future success. It is a 12 months full-time degree, so we should expect academic rigor as you study. And people ask me what are the evaluations or how the grading system works. So I will tell you quickly that it is some of the courses do have exam, at least one, but most of them is assignments, team project, and presentation. And if you have any question, please feel free to ask Salman and Carlos as well. It will give you the opportunity to launch your career especially in AI or analytics or data science more broadly. Build your strength and overcome your weaknesses. Learn to work effectively with others because it is a team-based program. And it would give you the opportunity to try new things and practice communication and storytelling. Now, without further ado, I want to introduce my alumni who are joining me today. Thank you both. We have Salman Arif, who has done MMAI in 2020. He graduated in 2020. He is right now Director of AI and Analytics Product Management in RBC Capital Markets. Welcome, Salman. And we do have Carlos, who actually is one of our first cohort alumni. He completed his MMAI in 2019. He is VP, Head of Data Advanced Technology as Okado Technology. Welcome, Carlos, as well. Welcome, both of you, and thank you very much for making the time for this webinar.
Happy to be here, Karan.
There are several questions that people ask me while they are trying to figure out that if MMAI is a right degree for them or not. So I would ask some of the questions and then we'll open the door to ask any questions that the attendants might have. And I'm sure they would have, and they would like to hear from you rather than me, because I would tell them I haven't done MMAI, so my view is quite small and might be prejudiced as well as a director. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so why don't we start from let's introduce yourself in a little description. Carlos, you first, maybe.
I can go first. So, hi, I'm Carlos, and as Karat mentioned, I did my MMAI in 2019. I'm currently the VP, Head of Data for Advanced Technology. What does that even mean? My team handles data engineering, data analytics, and data science for anything that has to do with robots that pick. So this is unstructured, structured data, right? We can do quite a bit to improve the performance of the robots. We also have things like teleoperation, which allows us to, anybody can go into a robot and actually control it with a joystick. Think like an Xbox 360 controller going into the robot and make it move. And we use that data for behavioral cloning, which is actually quite impressive to get the robot to replicate what the human did. Now, prior to this role, I was actually in Geotab. I was the AVP of data operations. I was working with Mike Branch, who also happens to be an alumni. So I joined Geotab in 2020, actually after completing my degree. I was prior to that in Scotiabank. And through that entire time, I have been in different roles. I have been an individual contributor. I've been a data scientist. I've also been a team lead for analytics. Then I moved into data engineering. And then progressively, my career led me into managing the entire portfolio of the data stack down to the platform. So a little bit about me. Generally speaking, I enjoy everything about data. Karad knows this.
Yeah.
But I have transitioned from a very large company, Scotiabank, to a really small company back in the day, 350 people. Then it grew, and then I jumped to Ocado Technology, which is about 3,500, give or take. So my background is data science, data engineering. That's what I really enjoy. And what I really enjoy is companies in the mid-size rather than large enterprises.
Large enterprises. Yeah, it has its own perks. I personally like startups as well.
They're more
Oh,
fun.
they're more fun, yes. Until they are acquired by some bigger company later on. That is not fun. I know, Salman, your company is acquiring a bank as well, right? RBC?
Yeah, so Kurt, I think I took a completely different route. So I was part of a smaller firm.
Mm,
I was group product manager at Borealis AI when they worked separately by themselves as well. So
okay.
I was at the intersection of cutting edge research at the fundamental research at quantitative finance and deep reinforcement learning. So our team really were sophisticated enough to build large scale models for high frequency trading desk. I was the product manager on that team, started out as an individual contributor. Well, product managers are never individual contributors. They're always a part of the
Yeah.
team. But the team never reported into me to a point where I actually went through the MMAI program, and I'll talk more about this. I was promoted to a group product manager, which meant like a team of product managers were reporting into me. Again, my primary responsibility was around large scale deep learning and reinforcement learning experimentation over large platforms. Borealis AI actually had Canada's largest GPU cluster. So we would run hundreds and thousands of experiments on a large GPU cluster. So distributed training, distributed inference. So the workflows were very complex. In certain cases, we had to deploy models on the site itself because the latency required to do this, you can't do this over the network. And sometimes you had to deploy models at the site in New York because we were working with a high frequency team in New York. So you had to deploy these models in the exchange at New York. So the latency time was less than a nanosecond. Soon after that, so Borealis was a small team of about, I would say, 150 people. I transitioned into a much larger org, which is RBC Capital Markets, which is about 3,000 to 4,000 people. I think my skill set was a good match for RBC Capital Markets because they were also doing research in reinforcement learning. But the emphasis was kind of different. I was involved in principal trading, which is mostly taking your own money and investing and working, where RBC is more around agency trading, which is basically large hedge funds come to RBC in order to trade their securities, and so the game that you play is very different. But essentially, the underlying technology that we were using was very similar. It was deep learning and reinforcement learning. Now we are building an entire platform for our clients, which is not just around electronic execution, but also around analytics, because there's a lot of analytics that go into trading large orders. So building an entire platform for clients as well. So a bit of a background about myself.
And Salman, is Borealis AI still part of RBC
Yes.
for the research? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So your role transitioned well from Borealis to actually in RBC, right?
That's right.
Okay. Nice, nice. That's very impressive, actually. I didn't know that they own the largest GPU. Is it still true?
I don't know if it's still true, but at the time when I left, they were the largest GPU
Largest.
cluster owner of yeah.
Okay, nice. And Carlos, about the Ocado Technologies, is it like robotics? What is this?
That's a really good question that I ask a lot. Ocado Technology is actually based in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And in the UK, it's actually, people know it because it's a grocery retailer. But I'm going to make it simple for everybody. Everybody knows Sobeys, right? And they have a new offering called Voila.
Yes.
Voila is completely automated on the background. So they have three customer fulfillment centers, one in Calgary, one in Toronto, and one in Montreal. The technology that powers those fulfillment centers is Ocado. So
Okay.
the entire site is automated end to end, right? And it uses a bit of a mixture between traditional simulation and machine learning to actually be able to run the entire grid. The grids in Canada are relatively small, but I'm talking about in the biggest grid that we have in the world, 2,000 or 3,000 robots running simultaneously. And the gap between the robots, if you look up Ocado, the grid, it's extremely narrow and they're moving at a really fast speed. I'm talking about 1 meter per second squared, of course. So extremely fast.
Extremely
And now
fast.
what we're doing is we have robots on top of the grid, which actually pick from the underlying toads and pack automatically. And the entire behavior is autonomous. So that's where the real machine learning comes in. We can do anything from, of course, we can do machine learning on the vision side of things. We can do deep learning, behavioral cloning, but things like what should you be picking? So more traditional machine learning comes in, as well as forecasting. What are you expecting your customers to order so that we have the right products in the right place? Because again, everything is entirely automated.
Automated. Nice. This is fascinating. Oh, in Canada, we are using machine learning and AI on much greater level than I knew. And I would ask from Salman first, maybe, what was your background before MMAI, Salman? What was your educational background? Where did you come from?
Yeah, so I did my bachelor's and master's in the UK. So I already had a master's program prior to coming to Queen's. I did my bachelor's in electrical engineering from University of Nottingham and a master's in financial maths from the University of Leeds.
Oh, nice. Okay, so you came from a quite technical field, I would say, right?
Yes, I came from a very technical field, but I had always been on the product management side of things. Very early on in my career, I was a developer, so basically a quant, but I soon transitioned out of it because I realized my interest really lies in product management. So I made that switch about 8 years ago when I moved from a quant to a product manager, and I've been on that journey ever since.
Ever since. And is it a rewarding journey? Are you loving your job right now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, I love product management. Like it's a field that has so many different connotations to it in different fields. If you're working for B2B versus B2C versus marketplaces in fintech, a product manager means different things in different industries, and we can speak a lot about it. So I really find this career really rewarding because there's always something to learn. As a quant, I felt like my ceiling was coming close where there's so much you could do. But as a product manager, I feel like the chances to grow are just unlimited. And the industries that are very close to what you do as a product manager also opens up as well. So VC as an industry, angel investing as an industry, like all of these subsequent industry also open up because they look for product managers in that role as well. So
I was going to ask that. Yes. And I remember when I was working like 10 years ago, I think product managers were not as much as people didn't know even what is the difference between product manager and a project manager. But now after that, especially AI and analytics, and then they thought that product manager is actually very, very useful position to have because they can manage from end to end, actually to have the MVP as a product MVP, right? So it was not something very common right now, but do you see there are more opportunities for product management now in product management field than before, especially in AI and analytics or data science? Do you think that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do see that trend coming, and I think that trend was very well established in SF and San Francisco. Like everyone knew the difference between a project manager and a product manager over there, but I think it took time for it to come to Canada. But I think now Canadian firms are also recognizing the difference between what a product manager brings in and what is the difference between a project manager and a product manager. And not to devalue anything that a project manager does, but that's a completely different set of skill set that you require. And a product manager is more business facing, more strategy driven, more client facing. And it's about how do you build digital products which users will actually like, will use, will retain, will come back to it, and which requires a completely different skill set than execution skill set.
Execution skill set. Okay, perfect. And Carlos, where did you come from? What was your educational background?
Before answering that question, I'm actually going to chime in into the product manager side of things. They're actually very difficult to find.
Yes.
Right? There's a lot of demand, and finding a good AI analytics product manager, it's actually very difficult. Data and AI by nature are more technical than usual. So I usually struggle to find good ones. So
good ones,
definitely
yes.
demand.
Yes, that's true. That's true. I agree. And that's what there was a survey, I don't know, 10 years ago that the AI product managers or data science product managers would be the job which will be very much in demand, and people and the firms would not be able to find that just because there are not enough people in this field who actually know the product management and know something about data science, AI, and could be client facing because they need business skills a lot as well. As compared to
they could also be quite expensive. So that's the reason why they're also in demand, right?
They make the big bucks. I didn't know that, but yeah.
Yes, they do. But about me, I started my degree, my first bachelor, which I didn't finish, in engineering, in robotics. And then I switched to actuarial mathematics. I'm originally from Mexico. And then I moved to Winnipeg. So I went from plus 30 weather to minus 30 weather, and just shift the sign, right? And I did actuarial mathematics and finance, so complete shift. I really enjoy the math. So my background, I do enjoy the coding, but I shifted completely towards, I'm going to call it banking. I did a bunch of internships at Scotiabank, and I actually ended up going into data analytics. So anything that had to do with credit risk, understanding how we lend, understanding how credit cards work, how do we offer those products? And it had all to do with finance, all to do with accounting, all to do with risk. I would say my day-to-day job back in the day was mostly Excel, Python here and there, but very rare. Visual Basic maybe, but that was literally the core of my day. Now, then I moved closer towards, we always talk about visualization tools, right? So Click, Tableau, Power BI, they started to become more common. We acquired one of them, and that's where my career naturally took me. So I was able to do both the finance and play a little bit with the data. Now, a lot of it had to do with the core of what banking does, balance sheet. How do we lend? Where do we get the money? And I naturally was gravitating towards different industries. So that's when I decided to do the MMAI, right? I was a senior manager before the MMAI, handling treasury analytics, FX, right? Balance sheet management, that kind of stuff. And then after the MMAI is when my real career came back to tech and it took off, right? So that's where I started to become a lot more technical once again. My personal background, aside from formal education, I have a lot of nano degrees in Udacity. So if you go to my profile, you'll see that I've done self-driving nano engineer, full stack development, artificial intelligence. I'm always learning, and I'm very, very comfortable with the coding aspect of things. So beyond the MMAI, and even before that, I was a full stack developer on my spare time. I feel very, very comfortable, but I did not do that on my day-to-day job.
Day-to-day job. Okay. And right now, do you do programming a lot or coding a lot as a VP as well, or not so much now?
Yeah, definitely not as much now. A lot of my work is really empathizing with the business. Empathizing with what are we trying to deliver, why, and then really put together strategies and the right people to achieve those objectives. And this could be, we want to have better metrics, we want to have a single source of truth. Everybody has probably heard that before. But then the more fun stuff as to why are our robot arms not performing the way we expect them? Why? What could we do specifically in the robot planning cycle, trajectory planning cycle, to make the robot move better? So that is a little more fun, but there's always a lot of foundational work that I do, which is everybody likes to talk about the shiny stuff. Everybody wants to talk about what are we going to provide the business. but creating a platform and infrastructure on the background is actually quite difficult. To Salman's point, latency is really important for robots as well. So having the right platform that can be distributed across the globe is very difficult. So having a good platform and infrastructure team and data engineering is really important. So my job is actually leading them, and where possible, if I need to, I go down into the technical detail, but
Okay.
I code very, very rarely.
Very, very early. Yeah. And about you, Salman, I don't expect product managers actually code a lot or code anything, or is my perception wrong?
I think it depends on where you end up going. So if you're working for a small startup, for instance, I think you would be required not to code I would say not to code that much, but obviously you will have to know programming languages enough to understand what the code is doing. And I think that is what is needed even at larger organizations, that you should be able to understand the training code and understand the inference code. So I think that is something that is expected of you as a technical product manager.
Okay.
But if you're not a technical product manager, so I do want to make an emphasis over here that there are two kinds of product managers, even in AI. They both need to be technical, but the degree at which they need to be technical is very different. So if you are a front end client facing product manager, even in AI, your technical skills would be less, but your skill as building a product would be more.
Okay.
But if you are a technical a product manager or a technical program manager, then obviously you will be on the other spectrum, where you would need to know much more details about the technical pieces behind it, as opposed to building a product. And I've kind of worked in both the spaces, so I can talk a bit about what each one desires.
And about technical product manager, do they actually go in front of the clients as well? Do they need I know that they need the business skills, because they have to actually, or communication skills or leadership skills, because they have to actually go to different teams, but do they face the clients as well, or no?
No, so it depends again on the organization. So if you have a small organization, maybe you are put in front of the client, even if you're a technical product manager. It also depends on the kind of product that you're selling. So for instance, if you are working at Google Cloud, you're obviously selling technical products. So you as a technical product manager would be in front of the clients. But for instance, if you're not selling technical products, maybe you're working for Netflix, or maybe where your primary space is not selling technology, but you are selling something else. That's where I think the technical product manager is more in the back end. Your client in that case would be, so a technical product manager's users in that case would be researchers, engineers. So you are supporting them as opposed to supporting the user.
Supporting the user. Okay. So they actually make, for example, a product manager in Netflix would be actually making the products, or would be helping to make the products for Netflix. So they don't actually have to go to the client and sell it as per se, as compared to Google Cloud, maybe, right?
That's right. That's right. I think Netflix maybe is a bad example because they're usually a B2C product. So they usually do a more product-led growth strategy. So if you're talking about a B2B company, let's say you're working for Confluence, for instance, it's a B2B product, right? So they have an entire product managers who speak to users and clients. But if you're the technical product manager at Jira or Confluence or Monday.com, you would not be speaking, mostly you will not be speaking to clients. You would be working with researchers and engineers and making their life easier in terms of, hey, how do we quickly deploy things? How do we quickly train things? How do we get GPUs to train our models? All of that stuff is on a technical product manager.
Okay, nice. And while we are on it, I would ask you that do you think that this degree, MMAI, help you to excel in product management role, or help you to land? I think you were already into product management, but did it help you anyway to actually excel your career in product management, especially?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the AI and analytics bit of product management is something that I picked up from MMAI. I did a lot of studies by myself as well. So if you, again, like back to Carlos, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you would see like tons of technical courses that I did from deeplearning.ai. They're constantly releasing courses. Even now they release a short course every 1 month. So I would ask everyone, if they want to get some technical knowledge, deep learning AI is a fantastic source. So is Udacity. all of these things like keep you in touch with those things. So if you want to be on that side, you have to constantly learn and relearn the skill set. This field is changing so rapidly and so fast.
Rapidly.
And back to your questions about how did MMAI help? Yes, 100%. Like I think AI and MMAI, like AI piece of and the analytics education that MMAI provided me was great. Especially, I still remember that reinforcement learning can be a very, very hard topic, and at MMAI, one of the professors was like really good at teaching those concepts, which laid the basis for me to understand reinforcement learning from a very basic level. Because if you start to pick reinforcement learning by yourself, it becomes really it's kind of hard subject. But I really learned a lot from it. From a product management perspective, again, yes, I think MMAI played a really important role, but there are a lot of other have to be part of the new skills that people are building, whether it be growth product management, scale product management. The product management itself is divided into multiple classes and specialties that you need to go to be good at. So if you want to be a product management in SEO, for instance, there's a completely different field to do that. If you want to be a product management in growth marketing, there's a completely different field for that. So product management itself is a very specialized field.
Nice. Interesting. And Carlos, I would ask you, you started right after your MMAI graduation, you actually started in Geotab. So I would ask you that why did MMAI help you to make that shift? I know that Geotab actually was one of the founder was your class fellows as well. So, but I want to know that how the degree helped you to get into that role in that company as well.
Yeah, I think he provided two things. I mean, to your point, one of my classmates happens to be my future boss, but I didn't know he was going to be my future boss, right? So a little bit of an unfair advantage there. Now, in terms of what he provided to me, one of them was validation, right? There's a lot of content out there, a lot of content. And a lot of it can be self-taught, but also realizing that I knew potentially more than I thought I did. And going deeper in some of those areas, reinforcement learning is one of them, but also knowing how to sell it, which is really important. Something that I see a lot is technical people who are extremely brilliant, who are not able to communicate what they're trying to do. And that gets into budget issues, that gets into almost like rabbit hole chasing. And the MMAI always plays focus on, yes, the technical is important, and you have to know how that relates back to the business. It was very project-based, and it had a presentation component, which meant you always had to be thinking about somebody else. And that is actually true of data. Almost always, not all the time, but almost always, you're building for somebody else to consume. If it's analytics, if it's dashboards, somebody else will use that data. Somebody else will use those dashboards. Same with data science. The really important aspect of it is, what are you going to achieve with that model? How we make it happen, the infrastructure that we use is important, but it's also important to bring it back to the business, because that's what the business will care about when you're pitching that opportunity. And the MMAI actually prepared me to be in that perfect intersection where I felt comfortable with my technical ability, but now I knew how to communicate it in a much more effective way. So to me, the MMAI is at that balance between, it's not too technical, you could go really deep, right? But it's not just business. So it gives you that ability to really distill the technical into something that somebody else will understand, and will give you the power to do the things you want to do and convince somebody else that it's worth doing.
Okay, nice. And I would ask you, because you are at VP level, so you must have a team, right?
Yes.
So I would ask you that have you seen any different trends in, especially in AI and data science teams now as compared to when you graduated? Is there any difference? Is it more in demand? Do you think any skill is in more in demand in AI? Has it changed trend at all?
Well, I think with the rise of Gen AI,
Yeah.
it's definitely changing. It's evolving, right? So there's still a lot of demand for data scientists, but I will be completely transparent and say that almost everyone that I know that is in the data field, to some degree, tells me I want to explore with machine learning. I want to be a data
Yeah.
scientist. And that also means that you also have to recognize what are you good at, right? Is to Salman's point, he can also be a quant, but he's choosing to be a product manager because that's what he enjoys the most, right? In the data field, there's demand for all the professions. And what you will see is that data engineering is making a comeback. A lot of people are hiring people who are going down to foundations, building the right data. Because what I usually see is the business wants to have the business outcome, and they will focus on usually a shiny object, which means hire the people that can deliver that object. That would be dashboards, that would be the data science model. And then you get into, great, it's developed. Now we have 10 models or 10 dashboards, different definitions. How do we make this work at scale? And what you will naturally see is that data professionals become closer and closer towards data engineers. They have to manage their own infrastructure. They have to manage their own pipelines. So they start becoming MLOps engineers, data engineers, analytics engineers, right? And that's when you start thinking about the modern tech stack, data tech stack, which would be now you have a platform to build upon, right? And a lot of the people, a lot of the organizations that I work with, because I do consulting on the side, they're still strong with foundations. So it is not necessarily that everybody has to become a data scientist, but realize what your superpower is, what you're passionate about, right? And hyper index on that. There is an entire room for analysts, data engineers, data scientists, product managers. But to have the good ones that are actually passionate about that is specific field is difficult, right? And also realizing that, in my perspective, I have been an IC before and I enjoy it, don't get me wrong, but I also know there's a lot of people out there who are a lot smarter than me, a ton more prepared. They really enjoy the deep research, which I enjoy more the business aspect of things. So instead of thinking of, I want to become a data scientist, which I could, I would rather actually do what I enjoy the most, which is let's help the business to drive business outcomes and let others who are better than me become those data scientists.
Okay, nice. While you have mentioned Gen AI, so I will ask Salman, there was a survey 1 year ago, I think, and it was by McKinsey, and they surveyed, I think, 250 different companies, and 80% of the executives actually said that they are using generative AI in their day-to-day job. So my question to you is, how much Gen AI is actually being used by executives, especially? I think 80% is, yeah. No, it's not true, but they think that they are using it. So my question to you is, how much do you see that trend actually being used by executives, and what does people think that it is being used for?
Yeah, do you want the honest answer here?
I want your honest answer here, definitely.
I think there's a lot of hype around generative AI right now, and everyone who is in this business benefits from hyping it around. So McKinsey has an interest in saying those things because this is the industry that we unfortunately live in right now. I think, to be honest with you, it is unclear to it is a big technology movement that's coming in. It will be like the internet, as the internet changed the world. But if somebody was to tell you that this is how exactly I see this changing, I think is probably can see into the future, because I think nobody at this point knows how generative AI will start to, like, there are some common use cases, yes, which is very common right now, which we can see with OpenAI, and and some of the knowledge things that we see now we can ask questions and get answers to questions, and those things are very obvious to us. And so I'm not talking about the obvious things. I'm talking about the non-obvious things that generative AI and other machine learning use cases are going to power, which is going to completely transform the way that we look at right now. Even if you look at the internet in 2000s, the internet looked completely different from what it is right now. We had no Facebook, we had no Instagram, we had nothing. And if in 2000 or in 1995 somebody was to tell you that I know exactly how internet was going to transform and there's going to be something like Facebook that is going to be $1 billion company, I think they would be lying out of their teeth right now to know that exactly how it's going to move. So I think Gen AI itself is a powerful tool, but to know like how it will change the world is very different. Everyone is right now building thin wrappers around OpenAI, which is generally not a strong moat. It's not a differentiated offering. And I think back to Carlos's point, where the business aspect is such an important aspect to it, is knowing how to differentiate yourself from all the other 100 companies that are building thin wrappers around GPT, right? And that's where the knowledge of the business is extremely important. The knowledge of monetization models, the knowledge of how digital product works, for instance, what are network effects? These are such important concepts to know. How do marketplaces work? These are such important concepts to know that has nothing to do with technology, but has everything to do with a digital business. And so knowing those things is very important to survive if you want to be on the business side of digital innovation.
Digital innovation. Okay, nice. And Carlos, is your company using Gen AI at all, or not at that point?
No, we actually are using Gen AI quite actively, and it's more on exploratory stage. One of the things that we're toying with is recipe builder. So we sell groceries online. Can you just tell me a recipe based on the ingredients that I'm putting on my basket?
Putting on a basket, okay.
So it is interesting, but because it also comes up with extremely weird recipes that nobody has ever heard of, and probably nobody would ever eat, if that makes sense. Now, I will introduce a caveat, which is if you count the Gmail features that are coming up with Do It AI, the BigQuery features that are coming up with Do It AI, GitHub Copilot, and yeah, we're using Gen AI every day, but it's in a much more lower scale than potentially is being advertised.
And it is hyped as well, right? I think people are using it much lower scale than it is hyped, that we are using Gen AI. Every organization is using Gen AI, but
and
not at
to
that
be
level.
To be completely transparent, it's more around the embedded use cases that are really sticking. Put Gen AI in the exact place where I use it today, which is if I'm typing a Google Doc online and it happens to help me come up with a better paragraph, I'll use it. If Gmail is introducing that feature as well, I will use it. Am I going to go actively out of my way always to a Gen AI provider that is specialized outside of my core? Probably not. Same with code. We use GitHub Copilot. If it was not embedded in my IDE, which we happen to use VS Code as well as PyCharm, if it's not available there, people are not going to go and copy paste their code, put it somewhere else, bring it back. It has to be in the right place at the right time. And there's very, very few use cases besides completion, auto completion, that I see being used actively every day. There's others, but a lot more narrow.
Okay.
I'm going to speak. I'm very passionate about this subject. I completely agree with Carlos over here. It's like Copilot is such a natural use case for generative AI that you in the IDE, it's such a natural way for generative AI to just interact with it. And it's such a natural use case for that. But I've seen other places where it's not such a natural use case, where generative AI would not provide you the same scale that it would provide you in Copilot, for instance. And so I totally agree with Carlos over there.
Nice. And does in your company, do you or can you use Copilot as well, Salman? Because it is a bank, so people.
Yes, the developers are using.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Nice. And I would ask you, there was a perception a few years ago, at least, that your jobs would be taken by a robot at some point, or there would be, you would lose the job um, if you are doing a very manual work. So I think in my mind, it's not possible to have the robots everywhere for all the jobs. For example, otherwise there would be two robots instead of you, and I would be asking a question from them. So you are leading a team. So how much is the upskilling needed for the people in different fields to actually retain their job, especially when it comes to data science, or when it comes to automation type of thing? How much skill is needed so that people don't have that conception that if I don't do this, I would lose my job and there would be a robot sitting instead of me?
Yeah, I think we have to look at it a bit differently. I think about 10 years ago, nobody would have thought that Facebook is going to be the biggest advertisement platform in the world, or Google is going to be the biggest advertisement platform in the world. So it's not the robots that are going to take your job, but newspapers are going out of business because Facebook and Google have become the primary source for advertisement. And I think we have to look at it in the same dimension. It's like maybe wouldn't be a robot that would be sitting down, but as a product, maybe my day-to-day activities of writing user stories and putting them on a Confluence and Jira and doing all of those things, there would be, and I know of softwares that are now automating that. So yes, so maybe something about writing, like for instance, right now, writing a crisp email is considered to be a skill set. Hey, can you write a crisp enough email for the senior management to understand what you're trying to say? People who write good emails get promoted. Like that is a skill set. But maybe 6 months from now, everyone is going to start using a software that really gives out crisp emails, which are better than anyone that can humanly type. So I think from that perspective, you would have to learn new skills as your old skills are being made redundant. But I would say that you wouldn't be completely replaced. Obviously, there wouldn't be a robot that can do everything, but you would have to learn new skills as old skills are being taken up by technology.
Nice. Yeah, I think you have put it. Yes,
I can also
Carlos,
chime in.
your company is actually using robot, like
I was gonna say that,
so
right?
I
So
was
I took you
question to
around,
you.
and is how do I ensure that I don't get taken over by a robot? I build the robot itself. No, I'm kidding. I think, to be honest with you, the way I see it is, now that I have been spending a lot of time in robotics, both at the lower level and at the higher level of the programming side of things, they're very difficult to orchestrate. Having one robot is one thing, and you see the Teslas of the world trying to build it. Getting robots to cooperate, very difficult, right? And in general, getting a wide application of robots in the same thing, it's a nightmare to get it working. Because think about it, we talk, we negotiate even just by looking at each other. We like each other, and that's maybe how you do business. Robots don't have any form of heuristics of the world besides the ones that we tell them and the ones that they can learn. So you could argue, yes, maybe there may be a path in the very distant future. But what I always see is robots break a lot, right? And you need actually a lot of people who understand how they're built, how to build better ones, how to correct them. And people who understand building robots is actually very expensive. Something that I see a lot is LLMs. Should I throw LLMs at everything?
Everything, yeah.
Right? So I have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But LLMs can actually be extremely expensive. So to your point, if we had unlimited resources, unlimited budget from that standpoint, for sure, I can see I would like my job to be automated because then I could focus on other things, right? But in reality it would actually be more costly to do that on a continuous basis. And the people that you would need to maintain either the software or the actual robot that you're building would by far outpace the cost of or the benefit that you're receiving from the business generally. So again, very narrow use cases that can actually use it.
Okay, nice. And I would, there is a question. They asked that question for Salman, but they did not ask anything. So, Kazim, if you are still here and want to ask a question, please type your question and I'll ask Salman. Um, and I would ask you this because people asked me a lot about the Career Advancement Center at Smith. So, did you ever interact with Career Advancement Center directly or indirectly? Because there are coaches as well as networking event. Did you go into any networking events at all from Career Advancement Center? Salman, you were in a cohort which actually went to remote because of COVID, yes?
That's right.
That's right. So did you did you attend any networking sessions from Career Advancement Center, which would be
Yes,
virtual?
we did, and yes, we did. Like so, like half of our course was during COVID, but the previous half was not in COVID. We actually even went to San Francisco for networking event. So that was the only. So one of our very vocal president at that time actually took the entire team to San Francisco, and we actually interacted with people at Google, people at Microsoft, to a point where I actually got my offer from Google. I didn't join Google, but I got my offer from Google because of that networking event as
Networking?
well. Yeah. Because of that networking event, I applied to Google after that, and I got a role at Google as well. So it was because of the networking event that uh, I was, I was eager to apply for Google because they encouraged me to apply for that role when we were networking. So I think that was a big outcome from that.
Okay, so networking that could people ask me how much networking is important. So seems like it is very, very important
Oh
uh,
yes.
as well. Okay, Carlos,
Yes.
did you have any experience with Career Advancement Center, either coaching or networking?
I did not use the services available in the MMAI,
Okay.
but I actually recommend them a lot. That's actually a lot of what I do these days, network.
Network?
You never know who's out there.
Okay. And if I ask you for tips and tricks, people ask me that, oh, I want to do MMAI, but then I want to be VP of AI as well, right after graduation. So my question to you, is there and there is no clear path for everyone. There is no silver bullet that if I am coming from a totally non-technical field and after MMAI, I would be the VP of AI. But do you think that there are some tips and tricks that people actually can change their careers, or what should they do? Not just having MMAI degree, but what should they do extra out of the box that actually can help? Is there any advice?
Yeah. From my perspective, I don't know if the question was from you or for Salman, but
Go ahead. I will ask Salman the same question about his thoughts, but yes, go ahead, please.
oh, good. So my 2 cents is I've actually seen non-technical people that were potentially in the same cohort that are now in really senior positions.
Yeah.
And during the cohort, we had a lot of conversations around who should do what, whether it's the presentation or the technical aspect of things. I think one of the most important aspects is being able to explain technical concepts in simple terms, which means you have to put the effort in understanding the technical concepts so that you can explain to somebody else. You have to be able to convey very complex information in very simple terms. And the second one, AI is changing a lot of things, and you have to be cognizant of the change that involves. It's significant, and organizations have a limited bandwidth for change. So knowing how to communicate that change, that could be very technical, but knowing how to become a driver of those initiatives to success, it's really key. And this, I'm not talking about the technical because my perspective is that is obvious. You should actually continuously learn. You don't have to be an expert, but you have to keep learning what's happening in the world. But the most important aspect is how is this relevant for the business? How do I communicate it? And if I was to get $1 million tomorrow, how would I drive change from this initiative? How would I actually make it do what it needs to do without making everybody feel like, oh, that's not what we want to do? So leading change and explaining things, very technical things in simple terms, are really important. And the MMAI gives you a lot of that.
So I would ask you, take a step back when you were actually doing MMAI, and let's say that you were looking for a job as well at that time. How do you showcase that to a potential, I don't know, if you are looking at a job at RBC or Scotiabank, how do you showcase that I have learned this as well, or I am good at explaining these things or taking these things to all levels, whether technical or non-technical? I can take this to executive level and I can take this to marketing as well. How can people showcase this skill?
That's a really interesting question. I've interviewed a lot of people in my career, and people that tend to be successful are the ones that have a balance between the technical as well as the communication. How can you showcase this? I'm going to start with networking. Be more comfortable with public speaking. It's not everybody's cup of tea, and not saying that everybody should do that. But generally, if you want to be able to showcase that you're good at selling things and that you understand what you're selling, the best way of doing it is practice, right? And whether it's meetups, conferences, volunteer to actually give a talk somewhere. Because losing that perspective, and we have it a lot, that you may not know more than the audience, right? It happens a lot, and I see it. The people who do well are not necessarily the ones that are most knowledgeable. But you need to be able to stand in front of an audience, which could be one person, executive, or it could be a team, or it could be 50 people, and start getting comfortable with your pitch, or start getting comfortable with what have you done? Why has that been useful, right? And understand who you're selling to. Of course, I'm not going to talk the same to an executive than I would talk to a researcher. So understanding what they're looking for and practicing that pitch. If you've never talked to an executive, look for a mentor, network, right? If you've never talked to a researcher, start going to more meetups, start getting involved. There's a really, really large community of data science in Toronto. Get involved, get other people to tell you what they're doing, and that will get you more familiar with how do I communicate what I have in my head.
That's a great advice. Salman, same question from you, that what are the tips and tricks and how to showcase those tips? That is there a way to showcase on your LinkedIn? How should you, networking is one thing. How do you think out of the box to actually get the job you want after MMAI? Because MMAI is not a magic wand that would get you as a head of product in RBC. So how do you showcase that you have learned you are capable of that?
Yeah, no, I think maybe I will take this down to like first principle, right? I think back to like Carlos's point is you have to understand what you're really passionate about, because it shouldn't feel like work when you're doing something. And as far as it doesn't feel like work, you will go out of your way to solve something. So for instance, I'll just talk about myself. I was really, really interested in product and how products work. And so that got me to a point where I was like, okay, I don't have a lot of product experience, for instance. So who's going to give me that job? And so I was like, probably seed rounds and pre-seed companies who don't have the money but need product people in order to build their product would be the first people. And I was ready to offer them my services for free. And as a result of that, I was able to show that on my LinkedIn that, look, I advised or was part of these products. And seed is a very interesting space to work, because seed allows you to work in a diverse field. Like you could be working in climate tech, you could be working in B2B software. So you can pick and choose whichever field you want to be in and learn products, because products are different in every different field. So I was part of a lot of Series A, a lot of seed and pre-seed companies, which I still am. And to this point where I'm again going to I'm thinking about changing my career one more time. I'm thinking about raising a VC fund. And all of those connections actually play a very important role for me, because now I will be investing in those founders as a result of that. And so these connections and these so talking to people, maintaining these connections is like very important. And so as I would say, like, go down to your passion, like things that you're really interested in, so it doesn't feel like work.
Okay. So yes, I have can an accountant. Kareem is asking maybe from you, can an accountant who has 20 years of global banking experience to embark on MMAI and fit in the work environment in Canada? So we have seen that, Kareem, in our classes, and I would let Salman say that. Salman, did you have people who have 20 years, more than 20 years of experience in your class as your classmates?
In my class, yes, I did.
Okay. And Jay is asking, where do you find seed companies to offer up time to gain more experience, Salman?
Oh, there you can find them everywhere. So AngelList, go on the AngelList platform. They'll give you a lot of like they are always raising Series A and Series B rounds. So AngelList is a really good source for doing that. Go to Y Combinator. Y Combinator is always it's an incubator. 500 startups, founders, a club. These are all those different places. Go to like every VCs if possible. They're always funding seed and pre-seed. There are VC firms that just specialize in seed and pre-seed. So if somebody wants to reach out to me on my LinkedIn, I'd be more than happy to offer help. But Y Combinator, 500 Startup, Techstars, Y Combinator, AngelList, they are all platforms that will help you do that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, both of you. This could carry on for another hour, but I wouldn't take another hour of your time. I have shown my LinkedIn. So connect me on LinkedIn if somebody wants to do that. And if you have a specialized question about yourself, whoever is seeing this, please feel free to email me. And is it okay, Salman and Carlos, if people want to connect with you on LinkedIn and might ask a question or two? Would you be open to connect with people who are interested?
Yes, absolutely.
Always happy to help.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for being here, for taking the time out of your lives. And it was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karat.
Bye-bye.
Talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.